Oh, yes.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at the new Studio Series number 65. And this is Voyager class Blitzwing from the Transformers Bumblebee movie. This is a toy that for a long time we weren't sure if we were getting it, because Bumblebee's been out for a while now, and we got all the other characters. Well, not all, but all, the main characters anyway. But yeah, we finally get him. There was some concern with this toy when there were some early in-hand copies shown off in which his helmet wasn't painted black. It was just like this gray color, and luckily it's not the case in the final product, so we're all good there. He looks pretty much how he should. There's also a bit of controversy around this toy because his alt mode really does not match what it was in the movie. It's like some made up approximation. I don't know, but for me, I'm really here for the robot mode, so it doesn't bother me if the alt mode's not exactly right. But if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Blitzwing's packaging. We'll open it up. We'll see his instructions. I'll look at his backdrop at some point during the review. And then, of course, we'll be seeing Blitzwing himself in both his vehicle and robot modes. I'll do some, group shots. I got to get the mandatory Bumblebee shot because, that's totally going to be my thumbnail for this, him holding Bumblebee up. And then, of course, at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So, Blitzwing comes in your standard Voyager-sized packaging. You can see him really well in the window, nice and open. Cool render of him on the front. On the side, just a close-up of that same render. Yep. I don't know what these little spiky bits are sticking out. Not entirely sure. And on the back, you have the actual toy renders in the robot and vehicle modes. Takes 27 steps to transform, so that's good. He's pretty complex for Voyager. Shows off his backdrop, which appears to be the scene where they discover Bumblebee in his Jeep mode. And it's got a very simple little description here. Blitzwing silences Bumblebee. And, it's direct and to the point. He sure does. Then it gets blown up for all its troubles. And then over here, you got just the full body render and an Autobot symbol. Which, do they always have an Autobot symbol? Or do they do Decepticon ones? I can't even remember now. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Weird. Alright, now let's open this guy up. Okay, here's our instruction book. And one thing I want to point out that's interesting to me. I don't know...
Hi.
Hey, buddy. I don't know if I'm just looking at this the wrong way, if it's an optical illusion, but this looks like a very different face compared to what we have. Looks like he's got some kind of goggles on or something. I don't know, are you guys seeing that, or am I looking at this wrong? Because it looks like there might have been some significant retooling of the face at some point.
Hi.
Hi, buddy. So, anyway, you got the render here. I'm looking up. Very cool. It's better than the usually very generic renders that we see on these. All right, here you can see the number 65. Go ahead and open this up. And this shows you kind of where all his weapons store and how to remove them. This shows off something that I didn't realize this toy even had until I opened it. He's got a removable hand so that you can attach his stabby hand. Also known as the weapon he used to stab Bumblebee in the throat and make him lose his voice. So I didn't realize that. I was really excited when I opened this dude up and took him out of the plastic shell. Good job, bud. And saw they had a stabby hand, so I get to have some fun, reenacting that moment, and I know what my thumbnail is going to be now.
Yep.
Yup. Alright, and then you have your transformation from robot to jet, which continues all the way around the back.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of the jet, and then it shows you where to store his accessories in the jet mode.
Yeah.
So pretty cut and dry. Here is an advertisement for Skipjack, who I just reviewed previously. And that's it for the instructions.
Yay.
Alright. So now we have Blitzwing in his jet mode. And I very much like the way this thing looks. I think the paint apps on this are phenomenal. You get this really nice glossy paint, this like dark bluish gray that they paint on a gradient against his light gray plastic there. You get a lot of red striping. The cockpit is this really beautiful like amber color. And overall, just looks really good. Tail fins look nice. They're plastic, but they're done in the same colors as paint. Underside is pretty devoid of robot kibble for the most part. You got his hands right there, and that's about it. And you have that like fake cockpit section here, but not too bad. yeah, cockpit. You can see his guns being stored along the bottom, and then his missiles are here under the wings where you'd expect them. And here's where you store the stabby hand. You go on either side of the tail here. It's pretty cool. You got some molded in wheels on the back, then you got the little flip down wheel on the front, which is very standard for an airplane transformer. Probably hundreds of transformers that have that. The nose, it points down a little bit just because of the way it connects, and it's very easy to bend it off the connection. And it might just be my copy, yours might hold in a little better, and it's not super noticeable, but you can see a definite little kind of downturn on it here. It connects to like the base of his head basically, and that moves around a little. So yeah, it looks great. It does a lot of things. The one thing it doesn't do is look much like an F4, which again is probably the main criticism that people have with this toy. For me, again, it's unfortunate. Obviously, I'd prefer the alt mode to be accurate, but once we see the robot mode here, you'll see why I'm not too very upset about this. All right, so the transformation for this guy is pretty satisfying. First thing we want to do is remove the accessories. So remove the stabby hand. You're gonna lift these up, pull the missiles off, and just set them aside. Just use these tabs to plug into the arms there. Now the gun, just wriggle that free. And you see there's a tab here and a slot on the inside of the gun. That's how they connect. And you gotta make sure you put force in the right spot to press it on and get to stay on. So remove that. Now, when you're transforming this guy from the jet to the robot, the instructions will tell you to flip his feet in like this before positioning his arms, and I'd recommend against that because it creates a bit of a clearance issue. So I would say go ahead and flip the feet all the way up first until they pop into place. And now you want to wriggle his arms free. You want to untab them from their position. So you're pulling them out off of the wings here. And you're going to straighten them out like this. And you can see this panel on the forearm becomes this part of the back of the wing here. So just pop it free, straighten it out, get things out of the way, just like this. All right, now we're going to flip his front wheel in, tuck it away, rotate the cockpit 180 degrees till it's upside down, and then flip the nose cone down. And you can see it plugs into the base of his landing gear there. So works out well, holds everything in place. Okay, so once you got that back, you're gonna go ahead and pop his upper body off the bottom of the jet, and you can see tabs here, slots that plug onto these tabs. You're gonna swing this all the way back, leave it like that for a sec, and open the cockpit, flip out Blitzwing's head assembly, push all the way back till it pops in, close the cockpit, and then swing all this down. And it unfortunately doesn't tab in, it kind of rests on there, which will probably create some annoyances for you when you're posing this guy, because this will tend to flop around, so it's unfortunate. All right, so you got this far. Then you're gonna take these tail fins here, just kind of close them up. These, you wanna actually, I guess, back it out a bit. It's premature. You want these to fold back down at least a little bit, so you can lift this up. Now you can pop them in place. So you do that, you're gonna flip this thing down, press it in, and then you're gonna flip this up. These tabs plug into his shoulders here. And don't plug in very tightly, so they may pop out. Go ahead, fold his wings back at a bit of an angle. Flip the wingtips up as far as they go. They have a stopping point. Just right around there. All right, and you take his legs, separate them. You're gonna flip the tail fins all the way around, flip those in, and then you're gonna rotate this all the way up, plug it in to become the inner calves, like that. Fix his feet, and turn them around at the knee. And then you can go ahead and lift his little skirt flaps up if you want to. Make him look nice and dynamic. And for his arms, you just kind of straighten things out. You're going to flip these panels back as far as they'll go. Position his hands however you need to. You want these little fin things on his shoulders to just kind of stick out for decorative purposes. It'll look cool. All right. Get them all set up here. And here we go. This is Blitzwing's robot mode. And it looks very, very cool. His head sculpt is absolutely fantastic. Looks just like it does in the movie. It rotates very well on a ball joint. The shoulders, they swing up and down on a swivel, and they got a hinge that lets them go out. He does have a very high bicep swivel, right there where the arm meets the shoulder. Double jointed elbows, which is good for posability. This hand actually opens and closes a bit, which is not something you normally see in this scale. It's usually reserved for much larger figures. This hand is a solid piece and actually detaches because that's where you put the stabby hand. As far as the waist articulation, his waist cannot turn because of the transformation, how everything's all connected here. But the legs can swing back and forth, in and out. He's got a single knee bend, as well as a thigh swivel, and he has ankle tilt. So there's all that, and of course his wings, can pose around a little bit for clearance. So overall, very posable and just a very awesome, very dynamic looking toy. I think they really knocked it out of the park with Blitzwing. So, his accessories. The missiles, you're going to plug in and you want the longer ends pointing down. So you go ahead, just put them on there. Oh yeah, that's one thing I want to point out with these, a criticism I forgot to mention. In the jet mode, his missiles, the hollow ends point up, so it looks a little not great. I wish these were more solid pieces because you shouldn't have hollow missiles showing in your jet mode, but oh well. And then the gun, it just plugs in two ways. You got the 5mm post, which will go in his hand. You make sure it's properly positioned because it's got to not only fit around this, but fit within these grooves here. And this tab is going to go right on his forearm, so really hold it in place. Very much make it seem like it's an attached weapon. So, like that. Very much like the recent Bumblebee toys where they don't actually swap their hand out for a gun, they just get a gun that slides over the hand, gives the illusion. And now for the stabby hand, let's take a close look at that. Very detailed. Looks very much like the weapon he deployed in the movie. Could use more paint, but oh well. This, if you want to store it, is just going to plug into the hole right in his back. Like so. And it's just going to kind of hang out there if he's not using it. Or, of course, you can put it in place of his left hand. Like that. Now, unfortunately, the left hand doesn't really have anywhere to go. Let's pull it out. At least not officially. Of course, you could, because he does have 5mm ports. You could just stick it on the back of one of his wings, even though it looks really silly, because now he's got, a hand sticking out. But it's an option if you just want to put it somewhere safe and have it out of sight, out of mind. So, yeah, look at this guy. He looks spot on. I absolutely love the way this robot mode turned out. And, it does mean that the vehicle mode was sacrificed a bit to get the robot mode right, but man, he came out so much better than a lot of the other Bumblebee toys, especially the earlier ones. And I know people were a little anxious to get this guy and were disappointed that he wasn't released right away, when the Bumblebee movie first came out. But I'm kind of glad they took their time with him, because if he was anything like the first round of toys, he would have been very disappointing and would have looked very odd. Again, that render we saw seemed to hint that he would have had some goofy features on his face. So, all in all, I'd say it's best that we waited, a year or two to get this guy. Now, of course, having the stabby hand out, we gotta have some fun with Bumblebee. Alright, a little difficult to get the balance just right for Bee to not flop out of his hand, but it can be done. I wish you could lift him up a little higher, but doesn't really work very well. There's only so much weight that his arm can bear, but overall, it does allow for some really great poses to reenact that scene. See him, got his weapon ready to just jab B right in the throat and really just mess him up. Of course, that's right before Bumblebee blows him up with his own weapon. But yeah, I mean, this was a pretty iconic scene from the movie, and it's just really, really good to be able to relive that moment if you want to. I'm not sure how well his arm joints will hold up like this after prolonged periods. May start to wear him down and make him looser, but I don't know. It's up to you. That's the way you want to pose him. You have the option. Here's Blitzwing's backdrop, and you can see it's just a upscaling of the one that came with our Jeep Bumblebee, complete with generic CGI soldiers who are not John Cena, disappointingly. Can't I just get some Transformers merch with John Cena on it? I mean, come on. But it works out well, and Blitzwing fits on it very, very well. He's like the perfect width and perfect depth to just go on here without any real issues. So that is a plus. Some of these Studio Series figures, because their backdrops are kind of one size fits all for their size class, a lot of them have a hard time actually fitting on the backdrop without really just trying to knock it over or risking falling off the edge. But he lines up with it very well, so that is a plus. And for our last bit of fun, here are our three main villains of the movie. So you got Blitzwing here, along with his two accomplices, Dropkick and Shatter, and the good versions of those characters. And they look awesome together, very menacing. Out of all of the Transformers characters in Bumblebee, these three are probably the most like the regular live action designs. Very alien looking, lots of moving parts, plates on their face, all that. Whereas most of the other characters were designed in such a way to look more like their Generation 1 selves. Well, them and Bumblebee, I guess, because he's still designed like his, Bayverse version. And all this is, of course, a result of the fact that the movie was originally billed as a direct prequel to the 2007 Transformers movie, so it was using, that design philosophy for the most part. And then later in production, they added the whole Seibertron scene, and they were trying to bring this more in line with like a reboot and something a little more based in G1 than what the movie franchise is. So there is that kind of stark difference in design, but I gotta say, these guys are like some of my favorite movie designs. They still have that very sci-fi look to them, but their features are, easy to distinguish on their face. They don't just look like a mash of polygons and scrap metal like a lot of the older designs tended to be in the earlier movies. So yeah, I think they look fantastic, and Blitzwing most of all. He is just a good-looking Transformer, whether it's, live action, G1, anything else. Regardless of the specific aesthetic, he just looks good and can kind of work in a multitude of settings. And again, his design is great. His proportions are very menacing. I really like everything about this guy. Again, the inaccurate alt mode doesn't bother me too much. It still looks like a good jet, even if it's one that's kind of made up. It doesn't look like just like a block with wings. It still looks like a jet. So that's good stuff. He does have an interesting combination of utilizing a real cockpit as well as a false one. You don't tend to see that much, but he plays it off pretty well. Might have been a little better if they had gone with either solid color or translucent for both, not a mix of the two, because I guess that is a little jarring. But not something I really noticed too much. I'm too busy just staring at this guy's just awesome visage and his very menacing look. So, that's kind of where I stand on this guy. He's starting to hit stores right now. I picked mine up at a Meijer along with Skipjack. They're being cited at a lot of Targets across the country as well. So I highly, highly recommend picking this guy up if you have any interest in the Studio Series or just good Transformers in general. He is one of the best I've seen out of Studio Series in a long time. He's just so cool looking. It helps he comes with a bunch of accessories. He gets his two missiles, he gets the gun, he gets the stabby hand. I love the stabby hand. and his transformation is involved, but not difficult or stress-inducing. He's a lot of fun. So yeah, get this guy. Hands down, one of the most highly recommended figures I reviewed in a while. But, of course, as always, that's just how I feel about him. Now I want to know what you all think. Am I giving Blitzwing too much praise? Are you having too hard a time getting over the alt mode? Or is the robot mode just not as good as I think it is? Or do you agree? Do you see this guy as kind of a must-have? As usual, any and all feedback is always welcome in the comment section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. And thank you for joining me for this look at Studio Series Voyager class Blitzwing. And with all that said, I will see you next time.